aerospace and defense manufacturing,
machines and automation,
additive manufacturing,
smart manufacturing,
the global manufacturing economy.
Welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals, powered by SME. From the design screen to the shop floor to final assembly, we drive the conversation about making manufacturing smarter by connecting people who are passionate about manufacturing. Visit us at sme.org.
Today's episode is sponsored by our guest.
Hello and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. I'm your host, Amy Bryson, contributing lead editor of Smart Manufacturing Magazine. Today we're joined by AJ Alexander. AJ is Chief Revenue Officer of SORBA.ai, an industrial artificial intelligence and machine learning platform. SORBA.ai strives to make AI and ML simple and accessible for businesses to help them do a host of things better, from becoming more efficient and reducing energy to predicting unplanned downtime and helping build a more sustainable future. Today, AJ and I will be discussing building versus buying an AI platform and suite of applications. Welcome to the show, AJ, and thank you for joining us today.
Amy, thanks for having me.
You got it. So what made you decide to make the transition and start your own company?
The Brain Trust wasn't conceived by me. I just feel fortunate that I was brought on at least to figure out how the heck we're gonna make money from building out a platform. So when we talk about SORBA, in a lot of ways I tell customers and partners and just the industry as a whole, I feel like we're just creating a new category for ourselves where we're more like an operating system where you think about what academia is working on, and the technologies from an artificial AI machine learning is typically 10 years ahead of industry. Where you look at industry as a whole from a manufacturing aspect, they're typically behind. So how do you cross that chasm? How do you bridge that gap? Is really to take the future and to make it not a commodity, but to how do you democratize this skill set? How do you empower or upskill the current workforce? So we always knew that if this was going to be successful, you had to automate a lot of the tasks it takes to build a data and analytics solution. So from connecting to collecting the data to building a model, a lot of those steps in an application building process for us, we knew we had to automate. So our secret sauce, what makes us really unique, or at least the IP under the hood, is what we call the auto ML patents that we hold. So for a user to automatically collect data, for a engineer to create a machine learning model without having to write a single line of code, and to do that in a matter of a couple mouse clicks, and then to deploy it to the edge of his equipment. That whole end-to-end automation, the whole end-to-end deployment being automated is what our main differentiators are, I feel like, are in the marketplace.
That sounds like you're making it quite easy for people, what used to sound and be literally quite complex. That's
correct. Yeah, it's when we talk about data science, there's a lot of research. All of the data says that it's a skill set, it's a niche that people spend a tremendous amount of their careers learning, studying, and it's really a skill set that's only in the hands of the few. So if we felt that if we could empower many, that's where you would see the biggest value and the biggest return on investment. So for us, our that ideal customer profile being your controls engineer, maintenance technician, someone that has the intimacy and the domain knowledge associated with their equipment, with their problem, whether it's asset health related, condition monitoring related, or if it's on the control side, process side of a manufacturing facility. We felt that they were the ones that were best equipped, best suited to deploy this technology, to adopt this technology. And just like any other skill set today, where someone knows how to program a PLC, someone knows how to write code in a certain language, having this what we call auto ML skill set, or data ops / ML ops skill set, is really the skill set of the future, the worker of the future.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what are the main differences between someone who wants to build their own AI platform to someone considering buying an AI platform?
Sure. Yeah, I think the easiest probably way to understand this, and something I'm sure the audience has heard of, is when we talk about that total cost of ownership. So understanding the resources from, having to write code to get data out of a machine, to have some type of middleware to normalize, contextualize that data, then having to write some more code in Python, and then also understanding the mechanics of taking this model, this mathematical model in all reality, and how do you deploy that in a production environment that should yield some results and ultimately generate a smart alert that the technicians, engineers, and folks on the front lines can take this decision and make a better, perform a more efficient routine, or control their equipment better, or maybe not default to traditional planned maintenance. So it's really all about making smart decisions in the field. Really, when we talk about like all those skills, so you have to know how to program. You have to have a connector to get data out of a PLC. Then we talked about the skill sets like on both sides of the firewall. You typically have groups of engineers that are classified as OT, operational technology individuals, and then you've got your IT business group that is typically has the networking background, can implement analytics on their own. So it's really the convergence of both IT and OT. And then, as you know, there's a lot of tools and resources. So when you think of that, you've got your ML engineers, you've got your data scientists, you got your individuals responsible for the data pipeline. So all of these whole committees of teams just to deploy one application can be really costly, time intensive. There's obviously a lot of risk and technical debt associated with this. By no means we're not knocking those individuals. We're just saying there's a better way. There's a more efficient way to go live with AI and machine learning.
Do you find that you go into situations frequently where people try to build it themselves, and you're serving as not just a cleanup crew, but really showing them the way of how to do it in the most effective way for their business?
Yeah, we've had this conversation a lot, and it's are you a software company, or are you trying to manufacture the best product to deliver the most value to your end users, whatever that product may be. So it's definitely a tough conversation to have, and it's one where you from an organization standpoint, it's a matter of culture, and not everyone's going to be able to afford 150 data scientists, and some organizations have very smart folks on their team, but then maybe don't have the statistical academic background. So we definitely want to pick and choose our battles. We definitely want to work with teams that at least have that innovative entrepreneurial spirit, and realize that there are tools available today where they don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I mean, if I remember when we started 7 years ago, this was all very much black magic, and today it's becoming a commodity. It's amazing to see how mature some of these technologies are becoming. So for us, when we obviously, us and the rest of the world is using open source, but it's a matter, it's a function of how do you put the open source technologies together in a pragmatic way that can work consistently in a manufacturing environment. So I think that's really unique about us, is the schema under the hood, all the services under the hood, how it all works together to really solve a problem quickly and at scale. That's a theme that hopefully the industry, that's probably been the biggest roadblocks. You see teams that have big budgets, a lot of smart folks, but it's really hard for them to scale some of these ingrown custom solutions.
To that point, with SORBA.ai, can manufacturers have their own suite of applications? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about SORBA as a platform, and then when engineers or teams are building, so when you think of the engineer and how they're using this tool to develop a model to solve a problem that is integrating really nicely with their process, and then ultimately to kind of contribute to three buckets, where I think we've heard of the concept of overall equipment effectiveness, and that's defined by availability times performance times quality, and the best in class typically operate at greater than 80%. But when you now think of embedding machine learning into those calculations, is now called overall machine intelligence. So I'm going somewhere with this, is where when you think of the engineer using a tool, auto ML, auto AI, they're the ones actually encapsulating their IP in the model. So if they're building new IP, they're building new libraries of applications on top of our platform, just facilitating, the engineer bringing more value to their organization. So I kind of like to use the analogy where everyone listening to this call has got Microsoft Office running on their laptop, and with your Office app license, you get Word, Excel, and OneNote, and it's all to make and to achieve productivity ultimately. So the wins that we're seeing are contributed to productivity. Can we save time here? Can we automate decisions here? Or are they directly correlated and related to production? Are we seeing a reduction in our energy bill? Are we seeing our maintenance costs go down over time? So that's, I think, the best way to sum it up.
So who would you say SORBA.ai is designed for? Who can really get the most use out of it?
Yeah, those customers that are assessed for just with results that are obviously driven or have data responsibilities, that have actual innovation, digital transformation responsibilities, where that's the holy grail, right? Is to do more with less, to take all this information and that technology stack to solve problems better. So I would say, from whether you're on the maintenance side, you're on the process side, you're on the system side, it's really the customers that are, strategic, have the most intimacy with that particular production problem, and are just looking to compete and to get better.
Given the fact that most manufacturers are smaller, mid-size, with the vast majority being very small, fewer than 25 employees, I think it is. I mean, are you able to address the problems of the little guys as well as the big guys?
Absolutely, and that's one thing we definitely are proud of, where we're not just focused on the Fortune 1000s. We've got a lot of use cases today where that, like you had mentioned, there's probably 20,000 small to mid-size manufacturers in the world, and for them to adopt a solution like this 5 years ago was probably a dream, and today it's definitely a reality. So we definitely want to focus on that segment, because we can't forget about the little guy. That's what, we get a lot of pushback sometimes for saying this, but just what makes America great again is having empowering those small and mid-sized manufacturers.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, you have some use cases or success stories. Are there any that you can share with our listeners about those who have partnered with SORBA.ai?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're, at least at the enterprise, we're supporting AB InBev, which is the largest beer manufacturer in the world. So they've taken one application of our platform, which is called Advanced Process Control, and they've deployed it now over 50 facilities globally. And the main target there was to reduce their electrical spend and fuel spend on their energy and fluid side of manufacturing. So we talk about boilers and air compressors, ammonia compressors, different power generation, combustion assets. So that was a use case that was really easy to quantify and to scale out, and even use cases around filtration. And we're supporting Coke Industries within the pulp and paper side. So we talk a lot about the analytics of Sorba, but when people start to understand our origin, having that controls engineering background, we're edge based. So a lot of the marketplace, a lot of our competition are focused on the cloud, where we're doing all this decision making, all this recommendation, all this optimization is taking place right next to the equipment at what we call the edge or the fog. And so when I talk about that, the data ingestion, how people actually use Sorba for IoT capabilities, and there's this concept called a unified namespace. And we've got pulp and paper customers, Georgia Pacific, that's using Sorba at scale when it comes to collecting data, visualizing that data, being able to normalize that information, both from field devices and from different third-party vibration vendors in the cloud. We've got all different use cases, from steel with Gerdau that's using our technology to control different aspects of their reheating furnace. Which is another fuel savings win. And then we've got other different types of applications where target the retailers, got 1 million square feet of distribution space, tons of conveyor lines, tons of motors that are powering those conveyor lines. So they're not necessarily manufacturing a product, but they're responsible for getting those boxes and those orders out the door as fast as possible and on time. So that's more of a predictive maintenance data collection use case. So there's been big wins there, from preventing bearings from failing to catching misalignment to shaft issues. So it's been a journey, and you see that a lot in the industries. Like some solution providers, vendors only focus on like process, or some solution providers only do vibration data. We do both. We handle both the condition monitoring data sources, all things rotating in nature, in addition to the process. So it's how do you marry both of those data sources to really give you a true picture of the health of your systems and where those systems can improve.
So it's really about understanding the whole battlefield and not just a skirmish or two.
That's correct. Yeah, starting small, of course. You think of like all the use cases, like if I had to pick one customer with all the hundreds of models, who knows how many tags they're collecting. So these are large implementations, but they started small. So it's like a battery cell concept where you deploy one cell and the more cells are all feeding off of each other. And we kind of like to use that OEE or OMI guidance of, is it the availability that you're struggling with? Is it your quality you'd like to improve? Is it your throughput from a performance aspect that you're trying to improve? So it's really up to the customer. I mean, we don't, that's one thing I just want to share, Amy, is that we're not experts in every industry. We always try to disclaim that we're not, we really try to put a lot of focus on our training, our enablement programs. We've got a curriculum now that's out on the web that can allow individuals to learn every click, every feature of SORBA for free. They can download, SORBA for free, so people can now start cutting their teeth with this technology much, much easier than, the traditional engagement process where you've got to do a pilot, you've got to wait maybe 6 to 12 months to see results. Then you got to put a whole bunch of momentum to scale those results. So it's really, the key is that shortening, we call that time to value, to go live in production and generate value. So how do you shorten that life cycle, that curve, and that's where the magic, I think, is happening.
Yeah, avoid that pilot purgatory that people just stall out and then give up. Yeah,
it's a real thing. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say we haven't gone through that. We definitely have, and that's why, from a change, and I mentioned that, I'm being honest with you, is because maybe the expectations weren't aligned, the success criteria wasn't defined up front, and because we're a software company, we rely heavily on our integration, our ecosystem of partners. There are different flavors of those partners, whether they're more on the management consulting side, or there may be an integrator that only focuses on reliability, or there may be an integrator that has more of the control automation background. And then there's some organizations that want to maybe even develop that internal integration capability. So there's always an integration level that's required. It just depends on how that total cost of ownership is defined up front, and that's important because that's the way you ultimately can continue scaling these solutions and building more IP.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the examples that you provided, we speak with a lot of manufacturers who are really struggling with managing their data and understanding their data and making better decisions through data, because data at the end of the day is only as good as the insights you can extract from it. But it sounds like, specifically from an energy efficiency and building a more sustainable future, with so many manufacturers have publicly stated these ambitious goals, if they don't really know how they're tracking, they're going to be in hot water. So finding a partner who can help them create something that's going to be able to be quickly implemented and be very effective versus trying to go on their own to do it is a smart thing for them to investigate, I would say.
It's the future, Amy, and so there's a lot of buzz obviously around ESG goals, and for us to get behind that and to really believe that this is bigger than us, where you want to help organizations lower their CO2 footprint, their total carbon emissions. So it's a different way of thinking about the future, knowing that, what we're doing, we're leaving a legacy, and then ultimately, we want to We want to bring back a lot of those middle-class jobs to manufacturing. So there's a lot that goes into that. Like you said, it's not just about the bottom line. There's more to our success.
Yeah, great. So what else should our listeners know, AJ, that we haven't yet discussed as it relates to the build versus buy conversation?
I would just encourage, listeners, organizations to obviously, get started. I wouldn't worry about, building a whole roadmap and business plan. There's a lot of open source, at least when it comes to these concepts of building that minimal viable product. Fail fast, fail often, fail forward. And I would just encourage, organizations to not feel that this is something that should be put on the back burner when it comes to IoT or AI and machine learning. Something that can be tested today, whether you've got, you don't need, the days of requiring years of data to yield results are long behind us. We've seen customers with 2 to 3 weeks of data really make sense of that from deriving insight. So this technology from a machine learning aspect is just becoming so mature, so advanced. I mean, everyone's seeing it right now with Chat GPT, where if you're not an organization that is trying to digitally transform, if you're not a business that is thinking about how you can incorporate AI into your production process, into your everyday workflows, the reality is you will be left behind. So get started, ask a lot of questions, and don't if you're early on the journey and you're learning, we're all learning, so we can learn together. But I think it's just a function of being able to start today versus feeling that you have to collect all this data and you have to make sense of all this. It's trying to create that urgency to know that the world is changing very quickly.
And it sounds like you help people make it a little easier to do all that and kind of demystify some of the complexity for them. So that's all great advice.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't, we talked about that business model, of OEMs kind of having the black box and these lengthy engagements and kind of holding the customer hostage when it comes to their data. So we, use that word democratize and, liberating the customer, allowing them to unlock the value from their data.
Well, that's awesome. Well, AJ, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us and share your valuable insights in those use cases. And if people want to learn more about SORBA.ai, where should they go?
Yeah, very simple. On your web browser, SORBA.ai, and it's all across our channels, LinkedIn, our YouTube community at least is starting to grow. So focusing, doubling down on that. We'll be releasing some Discord channels. So we're hyper-focused on the community, having more users, more use cases, and just seeing what we like to call Sorbians expand.
That's excellent. Well, listeners, go join Be a Sorbian. Go check them out. And if you want to stay up to date about what's happening in manufacturing and hear more podcasts, make sure to visit us again at sme.org.